The Bear Down Report podcast featuring Mike Page, Logan Bradley, Jack Wright, and Ryan Dingle.
Bear Down Report.
All right, guys, welcome to another edition of the Bear Down Report podcast. This special edition, I have two very good friends of mine, Mr. Kevin Oleski and Mr. Brian Highfill. Guys, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show today. And so we have the Vikings coming to town on Monday Night Football. Yes, the Bears have been terrible on Monday night, but they've also been pretty darn good against the Vikings. And so I am excited to have my two guests here today. Kevin, Brian, anything you guys want to throw at the Bears fan base before we get started with our questions?
Well, the Bears maybe haven't been great on Monday night, but neither has Kirk Cousins. So I think that kind of levels the playing field, I guess.
This kind of has the feeling of like a really low-scoring, awful-to-watch national game, doesn't it?
Yep.
I mean, the fact that every time I feel like I watch the Bears play the Vikings, like last year, I thought we were going to blow you guys out of the water, and then your backup quarterback beats us. So I don't even know what to expect anymore, man.
Absolutely.
That was Chase Daniel, right?
Yes, who's now in Detroit. Man, it stays inside the NFC North. It's always funny. I don't know why, guys, but I always think about this. The Vikings are the only team in the NFC North that I don't hate. I don't like watching Detroit. There's something about that team that I just can't quite put my finger on. And obviously we both hate Green. That guy's not going to last. There's no way. But the Vikings are a team that I've always just I don't know. I respect, and there's a rivalry there, but I think it's different than, the way that we all hate the Packers. If you guys don't mind, let's dive in. Okay, so first thing, the 1-5 start. I want to hear all about that, and I also want to know what's this turnaround that you guys have. This 2-game win streak where it's not just you guys are beating teams, you are pummeling teams. You guys kind of talk about what happened and what happened with this turnaround.
Kevin, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I think the clearest example of why we struggled so often early on is the fact that our defense is not what it was last year. That is by far the biggest thing. I think if you look at the Vikings in 2019, our defense was one of the best in the NFLs. I mean, just looking at some stats that I looked at before coming on the show was the fact that in 2010, right, we had around 10 turnovers in the first 6 games, and now 6 games in, 7 games in, we're at about 5, so we're at about half. Yards per game, it was about 310 last year. Now it's about 100 yards more at 413, and all of that is really tied into the fact that, we are missing our best player, arguably, on our entire team, Danielle Hunter, at D end. Combine that with, having some really young cornerbacks, and it is a recipe for a lot of scoring against us. So I think that's the biggest hurdle that we've had to overcome.
Brian, before I hear from you, I just want to, Kevin, really quick, do you think the Vikings are missing Kevin Stefanski?
I think that Kubiak, who is, helping us run the ship right now, I think it's become very clear that his zone scheme for Cook is working. It's just taken a little while to work. And again, when you have a defense who is putting you in tough spots, it doesn't matter exactly what offensive scheme you're running. If you're getting the ball, less than the other team and you're getting it in tough spots, that may be a recipe for not much of anything. So, I think obviously to lose a guy like him in an offensive mind is going to be, a step backwards for anybody. But since we had our current offensive coordinator as a kind of a advisory role earlier, I think he was able to at least, skip most of the kind of growing pains that it takes when you move in a new position like that.
Absolutely. Brian, what about you? What do you think has been the key to the Vikings turnaround?
Well, I just want to say I think Kevin hit the nail right on the head in terms of the struggles early in the season. I mean, Michael Pierce opts out of the season. He's the star, nose tackle that we signed in free agency, opts out due to COVID-19. He's brought in to replace Linval Joseph. You lose Daniil Hunter, the second or third week of the offseason, from what Zimmer calls a tweak, turns out to be a neck injury, and you don't mess around with neck injuries. And when you lose two guys that are literally brought in to plug up the run defense and put pressure on the quarterback, that alleviates those young corners that we have, Jeff Gladney, Cam Dantzler, Chris Boyd, these guys that really, Mike Hughes even, he's a third-year player, but, he's barely played, and now he's out again. Zimmer was trying to help those guys out, and so I think really to kind of boil it down is I think we really missed the preseason, not from a fan perspective, but these corners really didn't have any experience. A lot of even the defensive linemen that have to step up, DJ Wanham, who had a huge game against Green Bay, the game-winning strip sack. Jaleel Johnson. These guys are kind of figuring out how to play in the NFL, and so I think that was kind of the start. I will say, if you look at, there's no moral victories in football. I get that, but if you look at, we travel to Seattle and lose to Seattle by 1 point. We play the Tennessee Titans and lose to the Titans by 1 point. And those are, at the time, undefeated teams. Those are good teams.
They're great football teams. Absolutely.
Yeah, phenomenal football teams. And, Zimmer is putting them in positions to win. It's just, I think some of the team is going through a little bit of growing pains, and that's to be expected. I think in terms of our turnaround, I think winning is contagious. And I think going into Green Bay and beating Green Bay, when really we were playing with house money, nobody expected us to go in there and win. I think that gives a lot of these young guys a lot of confidence. And surely when you see Cook come back and have the game that he does, it's a no-brainer. They're going to start, collecting some wins.
He is an absolute beast. There's no two ways about it, right? The guy has just been electric. He's been on fire. He's been running people over. He's now leading the NFL in rushing after not playing for a full game. What is it about Dalvin Cook that is just struck fire right now, Kevin?
Well, I think, kind of like I said, right, losing our offensive coordinator last year, right, you lose some of that spark that came with his great offensive mind. But the scheme that we're running now, you can listen to the pundits, and they'll say it time and time again, that he's basically running, or we are basically running the perfect scheme for the kind of back that he is. And now that we've gotten weeks and weeks to kind of develop it and to get better at it, it's paying its dividends off. I think everyone's known for a long time how great Dalvin Cook is, but he's finally getting his chance to show it, consistently that he can do it year in and year out without, missing, huge amounts of the season to injury. So now we're starting to see that it's not only it's not only the run, but it's also the pass. There was a great kind of screen pass that he caught in the Packers game that went off for a whole bunch of yards and a touchdown. And then there was another kind of just little check down pass that Kirk Cousins passed to him, and he made it into like a first down. And it just shows you how electrifying of a player he is.
What is it about the Vikings and the Bears having fantastic running backs while Detroit and Green Bay just cannot seem to find it, right? I'm just thinking about all the really good ones that we've had throughout the years. Both franchises have had some stellar running backs throughout the years.
We can say the same thing about quarterbacks. What makes it so that the Green Bay Packers just pluck a guy out of nowhere and it's like, oh yeah, he'll be a franchise for about 30.
Jordan Love has to be terrible, right? The sports gods are making sure that he's going to be atrocious because they can't have another good one, right?
Boy, I hope so.
Yeah. Okay.
That is so. so on point where you're like, yeah, they can't get a running back. Yeah, well, we can't get a damn quarterback. So, it is what it is. So
100%. All right. So both Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook have really struggled against the Chicago Bears under Matt Nagy's tenure. And looking specifically at Dalvin Cook, who's rushed for 86 yards on 34 carries. That's 2.5 yards per carry. This dude is running people over all over the place. And so, guys, I want to understand, why do you think that the Vikings have struggled against the Bears as of late, right? When offensively, you guys know, this team, the Chicago Bears are atrocious offensively. But why the struggles? And how do you see this playing out on Monday night?
I'm gonna take the stance of kind of talking about something but not really saying anything at all. Whenever you play your rival, unexpected things happen. In any kind of sport, whenever you play someone multiple times a year, whenever you play them, and you know them very well, you almost seem to psych yourself out a little bit where you have like, oh, we're going to have this scheme that's going to trick them this year, or we're going to have, this X factor, or we're preparing for them to throw something at us. And at some points you get away from, I feel like you get away from what your true scheme is to try to, counter whatever the other side's going to bring. And sometimes it works and sometimes it fails horribly for either side. So exactly what I said at the beginning, right? The fact that we came into Chicago, took out your quarterback who was basically seemed to be the linchpin in the offense, and then your backup just took us out. I don't even know rivalry games. I don't even know. I just toss a coin, see what happens.
So Brian, what are you thinking? How do you see this game playing out as far as Dalvin Cook and Kirk Cousins are considered?
I honestly, and like Kevin, I hate to sort of go out on a limb and make projections quite yet, but I could see this really being the Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins show, to be perfectly honest with you. I think Dalvin's pun intended run that he's had the last few games is going to come to a screeching halt. I think that he is going to be utilized far more in the short passing game, the screen game, try to get him in open space. But the Bears defense is absolutely legit. They bottled up Derrick Henry 70 yards, less than 70 yards. And Tennessee, Arthur Smith, I think, is the offense coordinator for Tennessee. That guy's creative. He's super creative. What I think the Vikings have going for them, though, is, and Kevin mentioned this earlier, the Vikings utilized this zone blocking scheme under Gary Kubiak and Kurt Kubiak. And I really think that has helped this young offensive line. Garrett Bradbury looks like he is just, he's so much more comfortable. Pat Elflein is out of the lineup, which helps. It's addition by subtraction. Brian O'Neill is an absolute stud at right tackle. And Riley Reif, who is, has been in the NFC North, since Detroit drafted him, he's been playing, I think, some of the best left tackle play in all of the NFL. So I do think that they'll be able to pull some guys and get Dalvin into open space, but the running it smack in the middle, that's not going to fly. I think this is the game, and we've heard it all year. Well, really, we've heard it since the Vikings signed Cousins. This is going to be the game that Cousins is going to have to step up and play. Forget the whole Monday night thing. It's a prime time. It's a must-win game if the Vikings want to be in contention at the end of the year. If they win this game, they'll be 3-1 in the division. They need him to step up and really the whole Justin Jefferson X factor. I'll tell you what, I think that's another reason why we were 1-5 to start. For whatever reason, they left the training wheels on for Justin Jefferson. They should have treated him like Randy Moss as a rookie. The kid's a freak. You just let him play. I mean, there's no reason for BC Johnson and Chad Beebe to be above him on the depth chart. So I do think that this is going to be a real breakout game for him. And, that is, of course, contingent on the fact whether Cousins can avoid pressure and get the ball down the field accurately. And I think this is going to be the Cousins show. I really do think that.
It's going to be a really interesting matchup because what most Bears fans will tell you is that the strength of their team is the two cornerbacks, the number one rated cornerback and the number 2 rated cornerback right now in the NFL. Both are wearing Chicago Bears uniforms. And so it's going to be, Jaylon Johnson, who is our second round cornerback, has been playing stellar football. But you're right. There's a lot to be plays to be made. And especially when you're talking about, Dalvin Cook getting a little screen, a little dump off, the Bears have been just really susceptible to that, and if he can get those legs churning, you got to think he's looking for a good game in that regard.
Before we go on, what I want to say, because I feel like it's been a kind of contentious decision, right, for the last year, is that when we let go of Stephon Diggs, right, we talk about how much of a playmaker he was, but personally, from what I saw from Diggs from the last couple of years, I was actually pretty upset with him because he seemed to me to be a key example of what happens when you have so much talent you don't know what to do with it. Because there was that whole controversy of him being upset, not getting the ball, talking out about it. And, you could just see him on the sideline. He just seemed like a guy who, didn't know how to deal with adversity. And, we've yet to see how Justin Jefferson deals with it. But let me tell you this right now. Diggs, his freshman outing, first 6 starts, he had 486 yards and 2 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, first 6 starts, 557 yards and 3 touchdowns. So guess what? He could be better. And at this point, I haven't seen him throw his helmet around as much. So I'm like –
Kevin, it's so funny. You literally stole the question out of my mouth. I was going to ask, have you guys missed Stephon Diggs? And right now, guys, it's sure looking like both teams got what they wanted out of it, right? I mean, Buffalo they found a playmaker, right, for Josh Allen to throw to, and Stephon Diggs is happy to get out of Minnesota. And clearly, right, Jefferson is the guy, right? Has done really, really well.
No question. I think both teams totally won in that trade, which, I mean, you got to hand it to Spielman, man. The guy knows he knows when a player's value is diminishing, but he knows how to really, really, really buy high, sell high. He did it with Percy Harvin. He flipped Percy for a first-round pick, and Seattle won there. I mean, they turned around and won a Super Bowl with Percy. He returned, I think it was the opening second half kickoff for a touchdown. I mean, But he instantly replaces those guys with playmakers. So I never thought that after the Minneapolis Miracle that Stephon Diggs would be gone. But I do think drafting somebody like Justin Jefferson and seeing the results really softens that blow immensely. So sorry to cut you off, but
No, you're fine. My only question, I guess, before we move on to the next one is, do you guys want Cordero Patterson back? I mean, at any point, man, other than a couple kick returns that have been stellar, that guy just,
He's a special teamer. That's, he's past the horizon. He's a special teamer. Happy to, I'm sure, be part of the NFL still. So that's his role.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, this is a question that I've just been salivating to ask both of you. What are the matchups that you are most cued into on this game? Brian, if you don't mind, if I'm going to start with you.
I mean, there's a lot of great ones in this game, mainly because it's a division game, black and blue. I think number one is, they move Khalil Mack around all the time. They're going to put him against the weakest tackle. But I think, the Reef O'Neal matchup against Khalil Mack is going to be pivotal, because I do think, again, that this is going to come down to Kirk Cousins and the passing offense. And if Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and these guys get pressure, Russian Trevathan, some of these guys, the pass protection has to be there. So I think Reef and O'Neal is going to be a big one. And then this is not necessarily a matchup, but one guy to keep an eye out on, and I've said this since he took over the starting role for Anthony Barr, is look out for Eric Wilson. This kid is an absolute playmaker at linebacker. Kendricks is a beast. We know that. But Wilson is kind of the guy that really He's super athletic. He makes plays all over the field. He had a pick against Aaron Rodgers. He had a pick against Matt Stafford. And I really think that they could spy him on, Foles, and he can read the quarterback. I would be really interested to see what he does, because he's really started to show off once Anthony Barr was placed on injured reserve. So those are my two matchups or / guys that I'm going to be paying close attention to.
Well, thanks so Eric Wilson is a guy that we'll be paying attention to. The problem is the Bears don't have a running back, for him to tackle, right? So Ryan Nall might be getting the start with Artavius Pierce. If you've never heard of those two players before, don't worry about it. Most people in the NFL have not. So it's gonna be interesting, to say the least. Kevin, what about you? What are the matchups that you're most looking forward to in this game?
I mean, you kind of started to lead me into it. The fact that the Vikings defensive room this week should be figuring out how the heck are we going to stop Allen Robinson. That is the entire Bears offense will flow through him this week. So the biggest matchup is going to be him versus the corner who's across from him. More than likely, if they're moving him around the field, it'll probably be Jeff Gladney. He's the new kid on the block for the Vikes, the new rookie cornerback. He's the one who's been performing the best out of all of them, despite the fact that I will be the first to admit that despite my favorite player, Harrison Smith, being in the secondary is the liability for the Vikings defense right now. So can Jeff take up Allen? Can he? Because he went up against Devontae Adams, and he had him bottled up for at least some of the game, because it wasn't the bloodbath that was the first game we played against him. So it seems like he's progressing now. I have Allen Robinson on my fantasy team, so I'm also kind of hoping that if he makes some catches, gets some yards, and then gets tackled right before the touchdown, something like that. I don't know, but that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's the end old debate, right? Isn't it? When you have a player from the team that your real team is playing against, you're like, I want you to have a lot of yards, but I still want you to lose, right?
Exactly.
Right. What you need, Kevin, is you need some garbage time. You need a Vikings blowout, and you need some garbage time touchdown from Allen Robinson. But I don't know if it's going to happen. I really don't.
Can you think about, if we had this conversation 3 weeks ago, the vastly different conversation we would have been having? The Bears were 5-1, the Vikings were 1-5, right? And it just looked like this would have been a bloodbath. However, things have really, really turned, right? The Bears' offensive woes have been, all over the place, right? A lot of people calling for Matt Nagy to give up play calling and maybe even to be fired, right? But the defense for the Chicago Bears is pretty darn stellar, folks. So I think it's going to probably be a low-scoring game. All right, gentlemen, let's go to the next one. Your favorite all-time Bears versus Vikings game or player matchup?
Well, I hate to take the easy one off the table, at least for me, because I am of the younger generations. Basically, my heyday of watching Vikings football was Adrian Peterson. I mean, that man is still a machine. But the greatest, matchup that I saw was him versus Brian Urlacher. Getting able to see those two titans of hunking meat just try to take each other out, it was something to watch. So that was my all-time favorite matchup.
Man, that was a good one, because Brian was so good sideline to sideline, but Adrian Peterson was just a train, right? Just running through people. I think that was probably one that both sides got their win at some point, right?
And I think it's sort of unfair to Brian, because he was in the league for so long before Adrian's in there, and you can see Adrian Peterson's first game against the Bears, he went off. So I mean, there's a little age gap there, you might argue, but I still think both are amazing competitors that are going to be in the, obviously held up for a long time, and then NFC North is some of the greatest players. So, yep.
Absolutely. Brian, what about you? Favorite game or favorite matchup?
Well, I love the matchup of Urlacher and Peterson. I mean, I agree. Those guys are Hall of Famers. Urlacher, obviously, already, but those were a lot of fun fun matchups. I think my favorite game, though, and I'm surprised that Kevin didn't say it, is, the future Hall of Famer Matt Castle in 2013 in relief of an injury. Another questionable Hall of Famer, Christian Ponder, and coming in and winning off of Blair Walsh. Remember him? Him? Off of Blair Walsh field goal in overtime. I think that was probably my favorite matchup.
You know what's fascinating? The Bears, no matter how good their defenses have been susceptible to some of the worst backup quarterbacks that have ever existed, right? I maybe you guys can help me. The guy, he was Brock Osweiler. The Bears lost to Brock Osweiler 3 times with 3 different teams, and Brock Osweiler is no longer playing in the NFL, right? So just thinking about that. The one that the matchup that I was thinking about is Randy Moss before he went to the Patriots versus Peanut Tillman. What a matchup that was to watch those two play. It was a lot of fun. All right, gentlemen, let's do this. I have two surprise questions for you guys. We're not ready for this. Yannick, tell me what happened. Yannick Ngakoue, why did the Vikings spend so much to get him and then immediately get rid of him, right? What was going on with that situation?
Who do you want to start first? Because I think
Brian,
that's all you, Brian. You take that one.
When they first made the trade, I was like, wow. I mean, they must really think that Danielle Hunter coming back because we had heard, I think Danielle Hunter had missed, 14 or 15 practices, and they're like, it's just a tweak. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's true. I guess you don't want to risk your star, all-pro defensive end getting injured when it really doesn't matter. And then, they put him on IR, and you're like, okay, his first 3 weeks he can't play. And that was a pretty big red flag. And then when they traded for Yannick, I thought, okay, well, I guess they feel like they have to have some sort of pass rush because they didn't have anybody. Like I said, they had DJ Wanham. They had I don't even remember some of the other defensive ends that they have. Clearly Zimmer was like, I need to put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. I think when they made the trade, though, they did truly think that Danielle Hunter was going to be back at some point, and they felt like, this could be like, the Everson Griffin, Jared Allen, Everson Griffin, Danielle Hunter. Zimmer sort of always had, these 2 really good defensive ends to sort of, run the scheme that he wants to run. And so I think they really tried to pair Yannick and Danielle up, and I'm really upset that I didn't get to see that because I think it would have been really interesting to watch. That being said, again, I mean, you got to hand it to Spielman. I mean, they basically flipped him for, they moved down around. I mean, it would have been nice to have, get your second round pick back. But I mean, to get a third and to get that conditional 5th again, they didn't really lose too much for a guy that they had for 5 weeks. It's just a shame that they didn't get to play together, Danielle and Yannick Ngakoue. So short-lived. I guess that Yannick Ngakoue jersey that I have is worth a lot of money now. So.
Yeah, man, I wish I could pick up my phone and make a call over to the front office because, you think what you paid for him, right? You lost around in your picks, and what did you get out of it? Not much of anything, right? I mean, a win, and there's no longevity there. And so what made them, pull the trigger so fast on getting rid of him? I have to believe it's something personality-wise. I have to think it's something scheme-wise that, either he wasn't ready to do, or when he got here, he just to the coaching staff was like, this guy isn't our dude. I really have no idea because, like Brian was saying, I thought he was going to be the replacement for Everson Griffin. I think that truly when they did get him, they were like, oh, well, he's going to be our other side to this kind of hammer and anvil that's going on. But, why they got rid of him so fast, I have no idea. They don't pay me the big money for those kind of answers.
Well, I do want to real quickly, Kevin, I do think that honestly, it came down to money. Yannick was on a franchise tag, basically, which then he restructured to fit under Minnesota's cap. You got to understand, Daniil, when he comes back, he's going to want a new contract. He is absolutely top 3 defensive end in the NFL. He's currently being paid like he's a mid-tier. Now, he took a team-friendly deal and said, hey, I want to stick with the team. I'll take $70 million over 6 years, and that's a steal for the Vikings. He's a guy that should be getting, close to 18, 19 million a year. I mean, he is a freak. And I think with Michael Pierce he's going to be back next year, and so he's going to count against the cap. Kirk Cousins, cap hit goes up. What are you going to do are you going to keep Anthony Harris? I mean, there's a lot of guys that they like. They're going to have to pay money next year. They got, Cook they signed under contract. So, yes, the cap goes up, but they've got a lot of high-priced guys. And I think they just felt like, even if we did want to keep Yannick and we could get him, to a price that was under the cap, who's to say whether he's going to accept it, right? And, to your point, he could have been a little bit of a not a team player or didn't like the scheme or didn't like what was being asked of him. Maybe he preferred to be sort of like the guy, which he would not be when Daniil was back. So I think they probably felt like, look, let's just cut bait and try to get what we can for him. We know we probably can't keep him next year. And if we do, it's going to cost a ton of money. And I just think that they probably realized that they didn't want to allocate that much money to the defensive line, much to probably Mike Zimmer's chagrin.
So, gentlemen, here's my surprise question for you, which you guys were not prepared for. Teddy Bridgewater seems like he's playing fairly well in Carolina right now. Would you rather have Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback, or would you rather have Kirk Cousins and his contract?
Teddy Two Gloves, man. I mean, call me a romantic, but every single time the Vikes drafted somebody, I fell head over heels like, oh my God, Christian Ponder. Wow, he's just, oh my God, Teddy. Oh man, every single time I'm like hook, line, and sinker. This is the best decision they've ever made.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Rex Grossman, Mitch Trubisky, you just
insert name who's gonna come around next time, right? So I remember when Teddy had that no contact knee injury, and it was kind of like out of nowhere, boom, he was hitting his stride. He was starting to drive down the field, 2-minute drill, win games for us. We hadn't seen that in a long time, and then it was all gone in a second. We had to change all of our plans. So as much as I trust all decisions that are being made by Rick and Zim, I think the money that we have asked for Kirk Cousins, as good as he is doing, the issue comes to the point where, is the amount we're paying for him going to help us win the most games? And right now, I still think it's a question mark, because, yes, he led us last year in the playoffs. That amazing game against the Saints really showed me that he can win, but can he win enough, right? Can he be worth the we're spending on him? And, or do we, or can we survive with someone like Teddy Bridgewater, who only has to be consistent, and then we can spend more money on other weapons. For instance, maybe you can afford some other D linemen that Zim wants, or heck, let's get some more O linemen, something like that. I don't know, man. But at this point, I'm not sure. I'm not sold yet.
So Kevin, that was a non-answer. So which one are you picking? I'm telling you right now, you've got to pick one. Which one are you picking?
All right, I will say that I loved Teddy Bridgewater, so I would totally bring Teddy Bridgewater back. Give us some more money to throw around, make some more deals. Rick Spielman can do more than I think most front managers can do with that money. So cut our losses with Kirk Cousins. He's helped us along for a while now, but let's move somewhere else.
Brian, what about you?
I am Teddy Two Gloves all the way. I'm really, really stoked to see that he's playing. Last week he had like a 20-yard touchdown run, and he like literally juked out a defender at the 5-yard line. And it's awesome to see because, here's, not to sound like Chris Collinsworth, here's a guy that literally, they were unsure whether he was going to even have his leg. I mean, he had such a nasty non-contact injury that, forget playing football again. They were not sure whether he was going to be able to, walk again. Who's the tight end? Anthony Miller?
You're talking about Zach Miller. Zach Miller had a very similar injury. Yeah, the knee, they were talking about losing his leg. It was an awful situation.
Yeah, it's very much like Teddy's. So that number one is awesome to see him playing. I think the difference for me is that Teddy had an it factor. He has an it factor, and Kurt always looks like he's pressing. Kurt has the big arm. He can make all the throws when there's zero pressure. And that's awesome because at times you're going to get that, Saints game in overtime. Like you're going to have those at times, and it's going to look so good. But Teddy, it didn't really matter. He didn't have the arm that Kirk does. He's very soft-spoken, but he had a swagger. And, one game that really comes to mind, which was total antithesis of Teddy Bridgewater, was we were playing the Jets, and this was I forget the year. I guess 2015. I think it was the year before he had the injury. And it was overtime, and he just kind of like looks at Jarius Wright, and he just kind of looks at Jarius Wright, and they're playing press coverage, and he just does this behind the line of scrimmage throw, and Jarius Wright just takes off for 90 yards for the touchdown. And I just think that that's Teddy, man. He was just like, okay, overtime went, we can do this. Even the Seattle game, God, which is just so heartbreaking to even think about. Teddy drove us down the field in negative 20-degree weather, against a vaunted Seattle defense at the time, and put us into position to win. And he didn't light up the stats, but when he needed it the most, he performed. And it's almost like that's the complete opposite of Kirk Cousins. And, I wish him all the best. He when we drafted him, I kind of thought, oh my gosh, this guy's tiny. He's got to wear the gloves to hold. and then when you see him play, you're like, I can see why people like him, and I can really see why Zimmer loved him. I mean, I think Zimmer still really likes that kid a lot, and I think it really hurt Zim to move on from him because there was that connection. Zimmer kind of picked him as his quarterback. Who knows without that injury where the Vikings would be now, and what they possibly could have done. But absolutely, for the money that he's being paid now for Carolina, and he's getting paid decently. But I'll take that over Kirk Cousins any day.
I would trade better players than I should on defense to get Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback over Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky. Just keep about that, right? We could talk about that one for a long time, but I'm just going to there's no surprise here. I would much rather have Mitch Trubisky at my quarterback than Nick Foles right now.
What about Kirk Cousins, though? Would you take Kirk Cousins?
No, never.
Oh,
no way.
Why not?
The inconsistencies, which you guys have alluded to. I just think that watching him from afar, the guy has lightning in a bottle moments, and then we'll throw games, and you just go, what are you doing there? And then you look at his contract, and that doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, the Bears have overpaid players all over the place, right? I mean, that's your GM situation as opposed to the Bears GM situation is vastly different. But we could talk about that for hours. All right, gentlemen. Here comes to the point, the end of this interview. I got to ask, how do you see this game playing out, and what is your final score prediction? Brian, I'd love to start with you.
27-17 Vikings. I think, like I said, I do think that I think that the Bears defense will do a really good job of bottling up Dalvin Cook or Alexander Madison or whoever they throw in at running back. I am in Cousins we trust. Let's see if he can do it. I think that he's going to have a game with Jefferson, and I'll tell you what too. We didn't talk about him. He had a great game last week too. Look out for Irv Smith. That dude is a beast. He's a great blocker, and I think that he's going to find himself open a few times. I think Kirk is starting to get some trust with him. The 2 touchdowns last week against Detroit. I think that the passing game is going to have to be where the Vikings lean, and I think that they'll get it done. And I think this young defense, after putting together a couple nice wins, will start to get some confidence. And this is not a knock on the Bears at all. I think that they can stop Foles and outside of Robinson. I mean, I really don't see much of an offensive threat. And then
you and everybody else, buddy. You and everybody else.
Yeah, we'll see, right? But that's what I'm thinking. 27-17 Vikings.
Man, you really think that the Vikings are going to put 27 up on the Bears defense?
Maybe it's the purple-colored goggles that I'm wearing, but
All right, buddy. All right, 27-17 Vikes. All right, Kevin, what about you? How do you see this game playing out, and what's your final score prediction?
I think, and we've mentioned it before, I really think it's actually the Vikings games to lose here because they got the momentum. They believe it or not, right, as we would have talked about this weeks ago, we would thought the Bears would have come in here and smacked us around, but I think it's the Vikings game to lose because the Bears are down on their luck. They only have really one focal point for their offense where we have, not Diggs, Thielen and Jefferson and Dalvin, right? We have lots of points we can kind of focus on. It's really going to be, can the defense have the Vikings make more mistakes and put the Bears offense in a position where they can actually score, where they can have a short field, where they can, capitalize on our misfortune. So I am saying it'll probably be a lower scoring game. I still think there'll be some highlights, but I'm going to go 17 Vikes, 14 Bears.
Man, Kevin, that is fascinating. So if you look right here on my prediction, I have the Bears winning this one 17-13 over the Vikings. Wow. I think that finally the Bears defense wins a game for the beloved. Unfortunately, the Bears offense can't do anything and definitely won't do anything against the Vikings, but I do think they get a turnover in this one. Gentlemen, I got to say this. This was a fantastic conversation. I appreciate it greatly. Bears fans out there, will really like to hear from you guys again. So when we play again coming up later on in the season, if you guys would be willing to come back, I would love to sit and talk some Bears with you, especially after we see how this game goes and seeing what happens in the next time. For all of you guys out there listening, this was Ryan Dengel with the Bear Down Report. I want to say thank you guys so much for listening. And as always, bear down, my friends.